Good morning and a warm welcome to the inaugural session of the two-day national seminar on India's G20 Presidency, Scope for Strengthening Peace and Sustainable Development, organized by the Department of Economics, Nirmala College, Muvatupura, and sponsored by ICSSR. I request all the dignitaries, Sri T.B. Sreenivasan, India's former ambassador and chief guest of the day, Dr. K.V. Thomas, Principal, Nirmala College, Father Buzza, Dr. Meera R., Head of the Department of Economics, Dr. Liji George, Coordinator of the seminar, to occupy the seats on the dais.
Nirmala College, Muvatupura has completed 70 years of glorious service to the cause of higher education and has achieved the zenith of recognition through NAC accreditation, securing the highest grade, A++, and the highest CGPA, 3.73 in the fourth cycle among affiliated colleges. Today is another proud moment for Nirmala as we are hosting national seminar on a most relevant topic. This seminar is dedicated to exploring and analyzing India's G20 presidency, specifically focusing on its potential to enhance global peace and sustainable development. As we set to start our function, it's right to give an incredible expression of faith and surrender towards the divine. Here is Miss Nandana and Miss Hema Rajesh for leading the prayer.
हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद की जय करे. हमको मन की शक्ति देना, भेदभाव अपने दिल से साफ कर सके, दोस्तों से भूल हो तो माफ कर सके, झूठ से बचे रहे, सच के धम भरे, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद की जय करे. हमको मन की शक्ति देना, मन विजय करे, दूसरों की जय से पहले खुद की जय करे. हमको मन की शक्ति देना.
Let me call upon Dr. Meera R., Head of the Department of Economics, to deliver the welcome address. Ma'am, please.
Good morning, one and all. Respected President of the function, Dr. K.V. Thomas, Principal, Nirmala College, Muvatupura. Chief Guest of the day, Sri T.P. Sreenivasan, former Indian Ambassador. Key Resource Person, Professor C. Veeramani, Director, Center for Development Studies. Sri Pradeep Kumar K., Assistant Professor, Kerala Digital University. Barsar, Father Justin Kannadan, Coordinator of the seminar, Dr. Liji George, my colleagues, other illustrious guests, academicians, professors, and dear participants. A warm and gracious welcome to the two-day national seminar on India's G20 presidency, organized by the Department of Economics, Nirmala College, Muvatupura, and sponsored by ICSSR. Today, we have gathered here with greatest pride and enthusiasm to explore and elaborate on India's G20 presidency, an event of international significance that is being guided by the principle of one earth, one family, and one future. India's ascent to the presidency of G20 is a testament to its growing influence on global stage. It really marks a pivotal role in our country's journey towards a global economic and diplomatic powerhouse. Since India took its presidency in December 2022, more than 200 discussions were held in 60 cities of the country that could make the event more people-centric and help it to emerge as a national endeavor. The outcome of the summit were really transformational and would contribute to the emergence of a new global order in coming decades. The New Delhi summit gave our country an opportunity to demonstrate its contemporary technological advancement, its rich culture and heritage that has been widely appreciated and accepted by the leaders and delegates of G20. India could make several significant achievements during its presidency, which include mediating on Ukraine conflict, issuing New Delhi Declaration with 100% consensus, and African Union inclusion. This seminar will definitely act as a convergence point for minds passionate about economics, diplomacy, and global governance. Here we will delve into the intricacies of its presidency, the opportunities that we have faced, the challenges that we have met, and the outcomes that we can achieve. It will also probe into the various facets of India's presidency, from economic policies to trade relationship, from climate change to sustainable development, from infrastructural development to social and economic inclusion. Now is the time to formally welcome all the dignitaries gathered here. First and foremost, I would like to welcome the President of the function, our Principal, Dr. K.V. Thomas. The sincere efforts taken by him has helped Nirmala College to achieve the highest grade A++ in NAC accreditation with highest CGPA 3.73 in the fourth cycle of accreditation. On behalf of the organizing committee, I extend a warm welcome to our dear Principal. Welcome, sir. Today we have got the most apt person for inaugurating the session, Sri T.P. Sreenivasan, former Ambassador of India. We are really grateful to him for gracing this occasion with his presence and also for sharing his invaluable wisdom on international diplomacy and India's role in G20. His illustrious career as a diplomat and expertise in international politics will undoubtedly add a wealth of knowledge and insight to our conversation. His presence makes this event of immense significance. I convey a cordial welcome to the most illustrious Sri T.P. Sreenivasan, sir, with great joy and pride. Sir, hearty welcome to Nirmala College. Today we have Dr. C. Veeramani, Director of Center for Development Studies with us. He has expertise in international trade, quantitative economics, and economics of development. He is the recipient of Exim Bank's International Economic Development Research Award for the best doctoral dissertation in international economics. Sir, a hearty welcome to Nirmala College. We are also benefited by the guidance, support, and advice of our Bazaar, Father Justin Kanaran. His assistance has been vital in making this event a reality. Father, hearty welcome to the seminar. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Liji George, coordinator of the seminar, whose help has been crucial in organizing this event. She has taken much pain and efforts for materializing this function, and I invite Dr. Liji George to this function. Sri Pradeep Kumar K, Assistant Professor, Kerala Digital University, is also with us. His expertise in the field of digital transformation will definitely help us to examine how India can leverage G20 presidency to facilitate international cooperation on digital innovation. Hearty welcome, sir. Next, I would like to welcome all the colleagues of the Department of Economics, to all my students and faculty of Nirmala College to this function. Sincere welcome to all of you. Delegates from various corners of our nation, research scholars, students and professors from various colleges have come together representing a tapestry of perspectives and experiences. Your presence here today reflects your commitment to the ideals of international cooperation and your dedication to finding out solutions to the pressing global issues of our time. A hearty welcome to each and every one of you. In the coming hours, we will anticipate lively discussions, thought-provoking debates, and forging of connections that will extend beyond these walls. We hope that this seminar will not only enhance our understanding of India's role in G20, but will also contribute to a broader dialogue on global affairs. Once again, a hearty welcome to each and every one of you to Nirmala College and to this seminar. Let me conclude. Thank you.
We are very fortunate to have Dr. K.V. Thomas as our principal. His wonderful leadership and guidance always helps Nirmala to materialize its vision and mission. Let me invite Professor Dr. K.V. Thomas to deliver presidential address.
Most respected the chief guest and keynote speaker, Sri T.P. Sreenivasan, IFS former ambassador, Professor Dr. C. Veeramani, Director, Center for Development Studies, Thiruvananthapuram, our college bursar, Reverend Dr. Justin Kannadan, Head of the Department of Economics, Dr. Meera R., the coordinator, Liji Joseph, and the resource person, Prakash sir, and all other dignitaries, participants, teachers, and my dear students. A good morning to you all. We are very happy and privileged to have Sri T.P. Sreenivasan sir as the keynote speaker for the two-day national seminar on India's G20 Presidency. He is a well-known educationist and a well-versed person to speak on this topic. In fact, I know him personally because his son, Sreenivasan, we were together at St. Stephen's College, Delhi. Presently, he is a well-known journalist in New York. This two-day national seminar organized by the Postgraduate Department of Economics, we dedicate our efforts to exploring and analyzing India's G20 presidency. Thank you for your attention. Seminar be a source of inspiration, motivation for all. Wish you all the best.
Today, we are blessed as we have got the most appropriate person to open the session. It's a privilege to me to invite Mr. T.P. Sreenivasan sir for inaugurating the session by lighting the lamp and also to deliver the keynote address. Sir, please.
Distinguished Principal of Nirmala College, Dr. K.V. Thomas, the Director of the Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, Dr. C. Veeramani, Head of the Department of Economics, Dr. Meera, and Dr. Liji George, who made it possible for me to come here. The best news I heard this morning when I arrived was that Professor Thomas is a classmate of my son. In fact, I had a bit of a shock as to how old I have grown. To have my son's classmate as a principal of Nirmala College is a matter of pride. At the same time, I realized how old I am. But it gladdened my heart, because after 5.5 hours drive in the in the rain, I was a little bit demoralized. But when I saw him, and I knew I had met him before, so it gladdened my heart, and I'm very happy that I am here. Well, speaking of G20, I can say, having attended very many conferences and summits, I have been in multilateral diplomacy for 20 years, long years, in all the UN capitals, New York, Geneva, Vienna, and Nairobi. But I can tell you from my personal experience, there was never a summit like this in history. That is the theme of my conversation. It is not that it had a major declaration of leaders. And as the professor told us, 200 meetings in 60 cities. All these are reality. But in a sense, we transformed multilateral diplomacy in this conference, because it changed the pattern for international conferences. It completely transformed the role of the president, and in fact turned G20 practically into the Security Council. You may think these are all exaggeration. In fact, I wrote in the Hindu a few months ago that the G20 should be turned into the Security Council, as though I did not know the rules. So many people said, what are you talking about? Who will make you Security Council? My argument was, the G20 is better representative of the world than the Security Council, point number one. Because we have been calling for the last 35 years, we have been wanting to reform the Security Council. My first year in the UN in 1979, my then boss, Mr. Brajesh Mishra, presented this resolution to the General Assembly for the first time, seeking for an expansion of the Security Council. We did not talk about permanent members. Just the expansion of the non-permanent members was proposed, because proportionate to the number of the General Assembly, the 15 is too small. Because 15 was established when there were only 80 members in the General Assembly. And now that is 193, we should have at least 5 more. This was the logic. But we were taken aback by the opposition mounted by the permanent members against that. Within 2 weeks, all the permanent members made a trip to Delhi to speak to Mrs. Gandhi and to tell her that this will not be acceptable to us. That was the level at which they took it. And we have been trying various things since then. I was in New York twice after that. Many meetings of this committee to expand the Security Council was held. But we have not moved an inch in the last 35 years. And I have no expectation that the Security Council will be expanded in the near future. The reason is more than what you think. We think that China is objecting to it, Pakistan is objecting to it. That is not the point. The most important thing you have to remember is that to change anything in the Security Council, you not only need 5 permanent members, you also need 2/3 majority of the General Assembly. And the truth is that the majority members of the General Assembly do not want new permanent members. This is a reality which we normally don't notice. We think we can get a General Assembly vote for India to be a permanent member. No, you will not get. And I'll tell you a secret. We took a secret votes of all the General Assembly members personally. We went to each ambassador and said, would you vote? We will not tell anybody. Do you know how many votes we got? 7-0. You need 130 members of the General Assembly to support it. So when we say China is not letting us do it, or Russia is not doing it, is not the fact. The fact is that the United Nations would rather abolish permanent membership than take more. And therefore they find it illogical that a country like India, which is a democracy, is arguing a non-democratic practice of the United Nations. You may put the best angels there, but if they are not elected or cannot be removed, then what democracy is it? So we have to find an alternative. Since we cannot expand the Security Council, we cannot permanent membership. You need an alternate body. It will not happen in a hurry. But the point I was making was, because of its representation, if you look at the representation of the G20, it is very well balanced geographically. It has the permanent members, of course, naturally. It also has the 5 candidates for permanent membership. India, Japan, Germany, South Africa. So all those are also there. Plus, every region of the world is represented. So I would call it a dream Security Council. Not that you can make it into a Security Council. But what is that happened in Delhi was a reform of the Security Council. I asked this question. I had an interview with Sri Jaishankar, who was my own probationer back in the Ministry of External Affairs. When I told him that what you have done is reforming the Security Council, he thought for a while and said, now that you say it, I can claim it, he said. He said, you spent 20 years in the UN, so probably this is an insightful remark, he said. And there are several reasons for it. First and foremost, G20 is not meant to deal with political issues. Geopolitics is out of it. G20, as you know, formed in 1999 because of the financial crisis. And later in 2007, 2008, it became a summit process. There was never any intention that G20 will deal with geopolitical affairs. In fact, anybody could raise a point of order and say, why are you discussing the war? But it turned out that the success of the G20 in the eyes of the world today and the ability of India to build consensus is on account of those paragraphs relating to Russia-Ukraine war. But how is it economic? I know the Department of Economics is holding this conference, not Department of Politics. But the reason for it is, you cannot deal with the economic problems of this world today without resolving the Russia-Ukraine war. Because we are on the top of a precipice. Any moment the world can roll down because of this war. Because there will be poverty, there will be suffering, there will be no fertilizers, no energy, no food, while the food will be rotting in Ukraine. So we just simply cannot afford it. And therefore it was necessary at any price to get an agreement on something on which both NATO and Russia could accept. And so the whole effort of the G20 was on finding a language which would be acceptable to both. You may say it will not make any change on the ground. Nothing has happened. Even while we were discussing in Delhi, they were bombing cities in Ukraine. So, this is not going to make any difference on the ground. But the fact that we were not able to get an agreement on this issue in the several preparatory meetings of the conference made it essential for us to have an agreement there. And we know that obviously everybody worked very hard long before the conference. And surprise of surprises, the agreement was announced on the first day before lunch. I've been to many, many international conferences, very tough negotiations. Do we know when we agreed to the final document? 3 a.m. in the morning. When everybody is exhausted, several days of negotiations, and finally everybody want to catch some sleep. And then somebody will introduce a little phrase, and everybody, without even realizing what it is accepted. That is the kind of scene I had expected in this particular conference. Here was the Prime Minister announcing confidently that we have reached an agreement. And what was that agreement? It was nothing but sentences and words borrowed from the Charter. If you read it carefully, there is nothing in it except words from the Charter. But it has been very cleverly picked up from the Charter, and when you read it, you know who you mean by it. And then they realized that there was nothing about nuclear weapons in that. So they picked up another sentence from another document which says, threatening, using or use or threat of use of nuclear weapons is contrary to international behavior. That also was there. Everybody knows what you mean by it. It's Mr. Putin himself. It's addressed to him. So this magic formula that we found, even though it would not make an immediate impact on the situation on the ground, has created history. And this we must recognize and give full credit to our delegation, which managed to get these two, Russia and NATO, on to an agreement. And this was even more difficult because the previous summit in Indonesia, in the declaration, Russia has been named as an aggressor. And Russia had accepted it at that time. But they came to Delhi saying that this is Delhi, this is not Jakarta. So they wanted their name to be excluded from it. And the NATO members said that, India is on the side of Russia, therefore we must have Russia named in the document. So it was very, very tough situation. So this is the first contribution. On the second most important contribution of G20 Delhi is that the emergence of the global South. This is a very significant move. And that move is already having repercussions on our relations with United States and others. There was always a non-aligned movement, which was the political wing of the South, and there was G77, which was an economic wing of the South. So it was very clear who will all be in the South. It was never called Global South, but it was North-South confrontation. So Russia was not there, China was not there obviously. And India had the virtual leadership of NAM for a long time. And then non-aligned movement became almost insignificant. And then we started talking about a new NAM, which is basically autonomous, strategic autonomy. Because non-alignment means you are not aligned to anybody. Now we are aligned to everybody. In fact, Jaishankar said in the General Assembly that we have now become Sarva Mitra. We are the friends of everybody. No non-alignment anymore. So in this situation, who is going to champion the needs of the developing countries? And the answer was found by Delhi, calling it the Global South. In fact, we claimed that we did not say everybody has joined, but we claimed that we have consulted 125 countries out of 193 before we decided to call it a Global South. And that's exactly the reason why the President of China did not come to Delhi. He had announced that he would come to Delhi. But he did not want to be a part of the coronation of India as the leader of the Global South. Because the competition with us, China has the biggest competition with us on this. China had already made some moves in the BRICS, those who may have followed BRICS. BRICS was just 5 countries. And suddenly Russia and China came up with the idea that it should be expanded. And India immediately objected because this BRICS was formed in a peculiar circumstance. Do you know that BRICS was invented not by the countries concerned, but by an American economist who said that these 5 countries have several common characteristics as the fastest growing developing countries and very many features which are common. He just pointed it out. And then all these 5 countries thought it was a good idea for us to make an organization out of it. And China immediately jumped in and took its leadership. The bank is located in Beijing. And they started cultivating all these 5 countries because Russia was also there, India was there. And the expansion was proposed by them basically to find an alternative to NAM and G77. And so they picked several countries, Kuwait, Argentina, etc., etc. And we finally agreed. We had objected to it initially. But the power of China and the influence made it impossible for us to resist it. So BRICS today, in the eyes of the Chinese and maybe the Russians, is the alternative to the Western model of economy. And then we have now come up with 125 countries. So it's a direct challenge to the Chinese claim or their effort. And so President Xi said, I'm not going to Delhi to see Narendra Modi becoming the king of the South. And what has it done? In dealing with the economic and social issues in the declaration, you will find the words of non-alignment and G77. And to which now Russia and China are parties. And in a sense, since global South has not been defined, and what is in the declaration is accepted to everybody, you could even say that what is in the declaration is acceptable even to the NATO countries and the developed West. This is an extraordinary accomplishment. The third accomplishment is bringing African Union as a member to the G20. African Union, this has been done on the basis that the European Union is a member. When you say it is 19 and 20th is European Union, you must remember, which means European Union has 27 countries. They are also members. But the difference between African Union and European Union is that Africans are still fighting their wars, like Europe used to do 400 years ago. Europe was not a unified group in the world till the Second World War. And they were fighting wars against each other. And that is the situation in which so-called African Union is. They cannot express anything in a unanimous manner. So, and that is why when they applied a few years ago to become a member of G20, like the European Union, there were objections saying that how can African Union speak for Africa? That they are not able to do that. And therefore this resistance was there. And India grabbed this opportunity. I think it was a surprise to me we did that. And quietly worked behind the scenes and got an agreement for African Union to be a member of the G20. And this has gladdened Africa, even though they know that they will not be able to operate the way the European Union does. They are all very happy because it is a kind of recognition. And the credit went to India. Because the Prime Minister announced, he went and embraced the President of the African Union. And the kind of relationship we had with Africa, which was ruined by the Chinese. Because last few years, our influence in Africa has dwindled, and the Chinese have taken over by giving them money. The only way to get Africa on your side is to give them cash. I had a personal experience when I went and met the President of Kenya and said, please vote for us. We had an election to the Security Council. We were contesting against Japan. Of course, we lost it. But, so when I went to the President and talked about India-Kenya relations and how wonderful it will be for them to support us, so he said, I agree with everything that you say. But before you came, the Japanese ambassador was here, and he has given me $250 million. I said, is that the price of your vote? He said, no, the price is even higher. So there was no shame, no hesitation to say that. So he was saying, if you give me $251 million, I'll vote for you. This is the situation in Africa. You have to face it. So And as a result of it, our relationship with Africa was dwindling because they prefer American scholarships than Indian scholarship. They prefer going to famous universities rather than to universities in India. So the last preference would be for the Indian scholarship. After all the other scholarships are exhausted and only. And generally they had no great admiration for modern India. Old days, yes. And plus there are many Indians settled in Africa who discriminate against black people. I was myself in Kenya for 3 years. And we had a bad name because they controlled the economy and all their servants in the home were local people. And once in a while, one of these local guys will kill the whole family of Indians. This happens every year. I myself was attacked in my own house because of the problems between the Africans and the Indians. But all this seems to have changed in this one act of our getting African Union into the G20. So what have we done? Then of course I can go into other things which I am sure you all know. The corridor, then the mixed fuel initiative, all this. I'm not an economist at all. But so very important decisions were taken. But if you look at those decisions, you will find that it really had nothing to do with G20. If India, Middle East, Europe and United States want to establish a corridor, where is the question of G20 embracing it? Irrelevant. But we did it in Delhi at the time of the conference to give the impression that G20 has given some kind of a support to this. And similarly, there are other initiatives, or 5 or 6 you can find in from your declaration. So, and that apart, and that is supposed to be the substantial contribution of this thing, that need not necessarily have been a G20 discussion. It could have been done bilaterally or multilaterally. But what is the need of the hour of the world is to have a new global order. Because we do not have one today. The global order that was established in 1945, when the United Nations was instituted, was destroyed by Donald Trump. He went into the UN and said, I don't need your international cooperation. You do not need mine. So for me, America first, all of you have your country first. This was his philosophy. And he stuck to it all through. So he buried the United Nations, though there is some kind of United Nations existing, but it's just a shadow of what we created in 1945. So, similarly, take India-China relations. From Panchsheel onwards, we have many, many agreements with the Chinese. More recently, when Rajiv Gandhi went in 1988, we agreed that though the problem of the border remains, we set it aside and have cooperation with each other. That was not our policy. I was in school in 1962 when the war took place. So we used to go around shouting slogans. We will not talk to the Chinese unless they give back our 40,000 square kilometers of land in Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh. We were determined that we will not talk to them. But in 1988, Rajiv Gandhi went out of his way to sign an agreement saying, yes, there is a border problem. They didn't say they occupy our land, but in spite of that, we will build cooperation. That is a fundamental agreement. In 1993, Mr. Narasimha Rao went there, and he went one step ahead. And he said, we shall maintain peace and tranquility on the border. What does it mean? Which means we are not going to get back that land by force. We will not even try. If we agree to peace and tranquility on a border which is not acceptable to us, which was a virtual acceptance of the situation. But after the Ladakh events, China says all these agreements do not exist. They say there is only one line of control, line of actual control, which is not decided, so we have to negotiate. And while we are negotiating, they are capturing our land by centimeter, millimeter, taking it back. Now they have even, after Ladakh, they have taken more than 1,000 kilometers of India. They have not withdrawn from there. They have withdrawn from some places. So what I mean is, all these agreements and understandings reached as a part of the United Nations global order have finished. Otherwise, how would Russia go and attack Ukraine? In the Charter, the special responsibility of keeping the peace in the world is that of the permanent members, right? These 5 permanent members have the special responsibility of taking care of the international peace and security. And that is why they have been given the veto. Because they are supposed to be arbiters. They are going to tell the world how this world should be run. And the responsibility of that is expressed in the form of the veto. But they like the veto because they can destroy any decision of the Security Council. But they haven't accepted the reality that they are supposed to keep the peace. In fact, during the discussions in San Francisco on the UN Charter, somebody asked a question. He said, you are given veto to all the permanent members. Suppose a permanent member attacks a non-permanent member. Will they still have the veto? Everybody looked around and said, well, then they should voluntarily not participate in the vote. So let's not put it there. So the permanent member said, what are you talking about? You think we will go and attack somebody? We are the permanent members. And so this sentence, that if a permanent member attacks another member of the UN, they will not have the veto on that issue, is fundamental. And we are seeing it today. So any other war between countries, these permanent members can take their positions. But if a permanent member attacks, what does it mean? Which means they can veto anything and everything. So even if in the Security Council you put a resolution tomorrow that Russia is a good country, Russia will veto that because they said anything relating to us, we will veto. That is the situation. Even humanitarian resolutions were not supported by the Russians. So look at any of these in any part of the world, we don't have a global order. What should determine our behavior? And what we have done in G20 is we build some building blocks of this new global order. Many people don't seem to realize that. By getting an agreement on something on which Russia has been consistently vetoing in the United Nations, we have built the basis of a new world order. In the sense, the new world order will be determined not only by these 5 guys, it will be determined by the rest of the world. Because there is no veto. So, a building block, of course you need several blocks to become a global order, like building a wall. But India has contributed one block to this global order by saying that the permanent members shall not have the right to deal with all international issues. Not that they have accepted it, but that we have managed to do. And the second block is still in preparation, is the Global South. Because Global South is going to be a major victory for us if it goes through. But at that time, I asked Mr. Jaishankar in my interview, he said, don't you think there will be a backlash? Don't you think the Chinese will go against it? And was that the reason the Chinese president did not come to India? Naturally, he is not going to agree to all that. He said, well, these are things, but we had never claimed the leadership of Global South. That is our position. So he is a clever man, so he answered all that very effectively. But he conceded the point that these 2 building blocks we have created for the global order, and if everything goes well, that will be a biggest contribution of G20. We would be building a new world order through what we have done there. But as we all expected, the backlash has already come. Not from the Chinese, but from the Canadians. Why did the Canadians raise this subject of India having killed a Sikh terrorist 3 days after he went from here? He should have gone 3 days before, but his plane developed a snag. So he stayed 2 extra days. But before those 2 extra days, he had a meeting with our Prime Minister. And he told our Prime Minister, we don't know, this is the reports, that I have evidence to show that you have killed our citizen. And you could have imagined how Mr. Modi would have reacted. So he told them, first of all, this is India. Remember that. India does not have that DNA. We don't kill people. We are a non-violent nation. Please remember that. We don't do such things. But if you have evidence, give it to me now. We'll study it. So if he is saying he has evidence, why is he saying that we must investigate? What is the need? You have investigated, you have the evidence, give it to us. And he goes straight into the Canadian Parliament and says, we have evidence. Why? And Canada is a very good friend of India. We have students going from Kerala by the thousands. I flagged off a delegation of 7,200 Kerala students going to Canada in 1 month of September. You can imagine. In fact, you cannot throw a stone in Canada without hitting an Indian student or a Malayali student. So, how would anybody throw away a relationship like that? So, I have a feeling that the developed countries have a certain disquiet about the position that India is occupying or emerging. And we are not a permanent member, we are not a rich country, we are still 5th in GDP, but per capita we are 120th. How can you claim to be the leadership of anything? And that sense is still there in them. And that will come up in various ways. Don't be surprised. I was not surprised that the Americans supported the Canadians in a way. They said what the Canadians are saying is right. After we have had the best relationship with the United States, after the last visit of the Prime Minister to the United States, India-US relations has grown. I have worked in the US for 10 years. I have never seen such a close relationship. And that US is telling us that what the Canadians are saying, there is a point in that. They should know what India is like. So, we should be prepared for these backlashes because what we have done in Delhi is historic. And we should also remember what I just mentioned, the India-US relationship has grown dramatically under Biden. And that also is causing concern in others like the Chinese and the Russians. So, we have not removed all these complications. We have not solved the problems of the world, but we have made a beginning. That will be my assessment of G20. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Your words are truly valuable and give a new insight to the topic. Your experiences in international diplomacy and perspectives on the topic were stand unique. Thank you very much for giving us the wonderful opportunity to hear and learn from you.
Now, I request our principal, Professor Dr. K.V. Thomas, to give away the memento to Sri T.P. Sreenivasan as a token of appreciation and gratitude of Nirmala College. And I request Sri T.P. Sreenivasan sir to receive the same. Thank you, sir. We are blessed with the presence of Dr. C. Veeramani, Director, Center for Development Studies, Thiruvananthapuram. Let me invite Dr. C. Veeramani to felicitate the gathering. Sir, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me for this important conference on a very important topic. I'm very happy to be here for this. And today we already heard a very wonderful lecture giving the background on G20 and the major achievements that we got as a nation as part of the G20 summit. Later, after this, I will be talking on some of the economic impact of this G20 summit from a perspective, from the Indian perspective, that we will discuss in more detail in our next session. Now, I would just want to congratulate you for organizing this important event on a timely topic, which is currently very relevant. So congratulations for choosing this very relevant topic and then bringing a number of people to speak on various issues which are all related to this the broader theme of G20. And I would also like to invite the students here. I understand that there are BA economics students and MA students here. I would like to invite all of you to Center for Development Studies in Trivandrum. As you know, this is one of the leading social science research institutes in the country with a focus on economic development. And we have a applied economics program in MA, applied economics program, as well as PhD. So the BA students can try to come there as try to join there as a MA for our MA program, as well as the MA students can try to join the PhD program in our institute. We have one of the best libraries in the country in social science, large number of statistical publications as well as journal back volumes and all. I invite all of you to visit our campus when you get an opportunity with your teachers. Come to the campus. We will give you that opportunity to see and make use of the library and so on. And I do not want to take much time at this moment. You have a really wonderful campus. When I came, I could feel that positive energy here, which is not very common in many colleges these days. Many colleges have students, number of programs, etc. But here, the way that the campus is maintained, the greenery around here, as well as the positive energy is very, very welcoming. And I look forward to come back here again in some other event. And I also invite all of you to our campus. I wish all of you a very good, a very productive conference. And I understand there are also parallel sessions which are going on. Number of papers have been invited and they will be presented. And wishing you all the best and have a wonderful discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Now let me call upon Dr. Lizzie George, coordinator of the seminar, to propose the vote of thanks.
Good morning, all. Respected Sri T.P. Sreenivasan, sir, former ambassador. Respected Dr. K.V. Thomas, principal of the college. Dr. C. Veeramani, director, Center for Development Studies, Thiruvananthapuram. Sri Pradeep Kumar K, Digital University of Kerala, and all other dignitaries on and off the dais, teachers, scholars, and students. It's a privilege to me to propose the words of thanks in this prestigious occasion. First, I would like to thank God to give me the opportunity to coordinate a national seminar on behalf of the Department of Economics with the ICSSR sponsorship. We are honored by the gracious presence of our esteemed chief guest, Sri T.P. Sreenivasan, former ambassador, who spared time for us from his busiest schedule to inaugurate the function and shared his thoughts, ideas, experiences, and expectations in the context of India's G20 presidency. It's a great opportunity to hear you, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future events. Thank you, sir, for giving us this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, sir. Professor Dr. K.V. Thomas always plays a pivotal role in the academic endeavors of Nirmala College. The institution is passing through a wonderful time under the leadership of Professor Thomas. On behalf of the Department of Economics and all of you gathered here, I would like to thank Professor Dr. K.V. Thomas. Thank you, sir. I would like to thank Reverend Dr. Justin Kannadan for his sincere cooperation, guidance, and support. Without his support, we cannot even plan this program. Nirmala is really blessed with Father Justin as its bursar with determination, courage, and timely action. Thank you, Father. Let me thank Dr. C. Veeramani, Director, Center for Development Studies, for felicitating the gathering and wishing all the best to Nirmala College and the student community, and also welcome all the students to Center for Development Studies for research and further studies. And Dr. S.K. Prakash from Chennai to present paper here, and Sri Pradeep Kumar sir from Digital University of Kerala for your great contributions to this seminar. Thank you all. I thank all the professors, research scholars, paper representatives, participants, and all other guests on behalf of Department of Economics. Thanking you all. Now, with great love and affection, let me thank Dr. Meera R., head of the department, for her amazing leadership and advice and guidance. Professor Shimon Joseph, Ms. Alfonsa K. Joy, Ms. Mittumol Babu, Mr. Bestin Worki, Ms. Bima B.V. M.J., my beloved colleagues behind the curtain but makes this function. Thank you all. Let me thank the students who belongs to various committees who actively participates and make this a home run. Thank you, my beloved ones who made it. Thank you all. Let me thank all the non-teaching staff, technicians, our beloved Chechimar for great contribution to this seminar. Thank you. Thank you. Once again, I thanking you all. Let me conclude. Jai Hind.